Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you are uh, tuning in from. Thank you for joining us today. For those of you who have joined us before, welcome back. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, I'd like to just take a moment to introduce our presenter, Scott DeLong. Scott is an entrepreneur and business owner and author. He has successfully built and exited 3 businesses. He's a lifelong learner and earned his master's degree in leadership development at the age of 54, and then later completed his doctorate in leadership studies. So this is very much a passion for him, these topics that we talk about in these monthly interactive meetings. Scott's promise to his clients that he works with is that the techniques he coaches on bring tremendous benefits to the organization and beyond. It extends to the whole person. So not just the work persona, but also the relationships that you may have in your life. These soft skills are beneficial inside and outside of the office. So before we get started, a couple quick notes. We highly encourage you to turn on your cameras and be an active participant, as this is an interactive meeting. We're looking for questions and comments and, to really have a conversation and establish some dialogue. Please feel free, if you not comfortable asking a question, yourself, you can always put them into the chat box and I'll be happy to relay them to Scott during the meeting. And then just as a last reminder, as we wrap up the webinar for today, you will get a QR code for the free ebook focused on this topic of executive insight. So all that being said, here's our presenter, Scott DeLong.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Really appreciate you being here. So today's topic is really going to be on emotional intelligence, which has been a tagline for maybe the past 20 years or so, with Daniel Goleman coming up with talking about EQ, he called it at the time. It's now EI, emotional intelligence. It's not a quotient, it's an intelligence. And it is a learned behavior as well. We're not born with this, but we can learn to utilize that. But before we get started, I want to talk a little bit about the purpose of the session. Oh, and let me go back. John asked if you'd turn your cameras on. It really helps me if your cameras are on. I get to see faces, right? Who's smiling, who's frowning, who's resonating, who's not. And then it might even adjust the approach that we take going forward. So if you're in a spot that you can turn your cameras on, I really would appreciate it if you do. The second thing is that there are 3 ways to interact with us. 1, if you've got a question, ask it, right? Put up your hand, John will put you in. Well, you can interrupt right in the middle of the session. I'm fine with that. I want to make this interactive and get the purpose of the thing is so that we can learn together. The second way you can do it, John mentioned that if you got a question that you're not comfortable asking yourself, go ahead and put it in the chat. Just chat it, put it in the chat, and John will ask it at the end of the session. And the third way is there is going to be a question and answer period that we have at the end where come on camera, ask a question, we get in some dialogue and some discussion, and hopefully, we all learn something together. So those would be the 3 ways that we can get into this. The purpose of this, it's threefold, maybe 4. We're going to give a brief overview of what emotional intelligence really is. We're going to describe the first 2 components, which are surrounding awareness of others and awareness of self. We're going to discuss some of the findings that we've had along those awareness, as well as give some interesting stats that came from Harvard Business Review, just to prove that it's not just us saying it, right? And then really, we're going to give you 1 tangible coaching suggestion at the end that says, what can I do right now? What can I just change right now? What can I add to my practice right now? All right. So without any further, we're going to go a little bit further. So I want to talk about the 4 components of the ability model of EI. And this came from Salovoy and Mayer way back in the early 90s when they talked about really 4 components. The first one is perceiving emotions, taking a look and seeing what emotions really are. The second one is understanding what those emotions do and how we react to them, right? Reasoning with emotions, not only what are their purpose, then what do we do with that? And then the 4th section is managing emotions. And a lot of people talk about control, like I'm going to control my emotions. And we don't suggest control. Control is putting a lid on something, right? And when you put a lid on something, all it does is boil back up. So what I want to learn to do is manage my emotions. And that's where our interactive tip is going to be at the end of this, is talking about one suggestion on which you might be able to learn how to manage emotions rather than just trying to control them. So awareness of others. This is recognizing, and there's basically 7 basic emotions. There's probably 45, 55 different sub-emotions under these, but they're really fear, anger, sadness, disgust, shame, surprise, maybe, and joy. And when you look at that list of 7, 5 of them seem negative, only negative. So what's the purpose of all those negatives? There's only one positive, joy. Joy is the only positive emotion. Surprise can go either way, right? It can go back and forth, whether it's a positive or a negative. But the 7 basic of emotions, 5 of those are absolutely what people would look at as negative emotions. So why bother? Why should we have all these negatives? Well, there's a purpose for all of them, right? The reason that we have something like fear or anger is that it elicits a response from us. We can make it a positive response or a negative response, but they get us to do something. What we want to get is to a state of joy, certainly the positive emotion of joy. But if I'm angry about something, that is going to cause me to act, hopefully act rather than react. And we'll talk a little bit about acting versus reacting a little bit later. But if we can act upon that emotion and we can learn to manage that emotion, we can make something positive out of that. So we're talking to executives about executives here. And what I'm going to suggest is that most of us in those executive roles are pretty good at this awareness of others. We see what the emotions are in others, and we can recognize those pretty quickly, and we can adjust our behavior to get what it is that we want based on dealing with who we're talking to and what state they're at. And I'm going to suggest most of us are pretty good at that. There's not a whole lot of work that we need to do that. But here's the catch, right? Ever heard this statement? It's not you, it's me. Usually when we're breaking up with somebody, oh no, it's not you, it's me. We don't believe it. It's not something that we really believe. It's them. The reason we broke up with them is because of them or the things that they did to us. But the fact of the matter is that it is about you. In fact, our coaching is all about dealing with the individual. I get hired constantly for executive coaching from people that want me to fix others. Hey, fix my team, fix this, fix that, right? Within my organization. And while some of the others may need some work as well, what these leaders typically don't recognize is that it is their behaviors that are stopping their team from reaching the goals that they've set for themselves. So when we coach, we tell everybody that no matter what you tell me, whatever you're discussing and dealing with, it is 100% on you to fix it. Fix you, because that's all we really have control over. A friend of mine years ago told me, he goes, most people think marriages are 50-50. We talk about a marriage being 50-50 and it's not. It's 100%. It's 100% on me. Now, hopefully my spouse believes the same thing. It's 100% on her, and that we can do this marriage thing together. But it's 100% on me to be my best as often as I can. Recognize when I'm not, understand what that means, and do something about it, right? What are the exercises that I'm going to do about that? So that's where we get into self-awareness. Our experience tells us, and I mentioned a little bit earlier, that most of my clients think it's all them. It's just fix them, fix them, fix them. And it's the self-awareness that we're not as good at. In fact, what we find is most people think they're really self-aware and come to find out they're not. Harvard Business Review did a study, and they asked several executives, how are you at emotional awareness? Self-awareness, right? 95% of the executives said, not a problem. I really know who I am, and I really see myself, and I see myself for who I am. When they went through the study, what they came to find out was only 10 to 15% of the people actually were good at it. And these are executives, right? So how do we get to those spots? Well, for most people, and I talked to a guy that had something different today, but for most people, to climb in the executive ranks, we tend to have high egos. We think we're pretty good at stuff. That ego is what carries us through to prove that we're good at stuff and do the things that we need to do in order to continue to get promoted into this job or this role or that role, right? What we rarely do is take a good look in the mirror and say, oh, what are my flaws? And one of my favorite things is that I tell people all the time, my mirror lies to me, right? So I take a look at myself in the mirror and think, oh, I'm looking pretty good. I get a photo of my same self that same day. Oh my gosh, what a difference, right? So even my mirror lies to me, says that I'm doing okay, and I'm really not. So this whole self-awareness piece is where we tend to find gaps where people think they're good at something and they're really not that good. We all have blind spots. We all have blind spots. And it's good for someone else to point out what those blind spots are so that we can do something about it if we care to. So that's what this is all about. This is aligning our self-perception with our leadership reality. Make sense? Nod your head if you agree. Let's move forward. All right. So I'm going to tell a little story of the seemingly insensitive executive. Not from the executive's point of view, they're doing all the right things because that's what we're trying to do. We try to do the things that are right. So we've got a client that I'm thinking about that honestly believes, I'm a nice guy. I manage my emotions properly. I never get upset. I just allow whatever. And from his point of view, he's a pushover and people walk all over him, right? And you talk to the people that work for him, just the opposite is true, right? They think that he's just always angry, can never be pleased, just kind of the opposite role of that. And the difference is that we see ourselves in the mirror and we see this positive image. And they're looking at us like the photograph, right? To see what they see through their filters and how they see the world. So in this executive's mind, he's just a nice guy. And he is a nice guy, right? He's a nice guy. What he doesn't see is the blind spots that his people see. Was just at a situation with them recently where I had a group of their people together and they were telling me things that are just so contrary to what he tells me when I'm sitting on the one-on-one sessions with them. Both are true from their point of view. The intelligent person, and this guy happens to be a pretty intelligent person, gets a third party to take a look and say, okay, what are my blind spots? Where can I grow? Where can they grow? And do all of that. So that's what our coaching program is really all about. And it is about not just the recognition, self-recognition. What are the emotions? What do those emotions trigger in me? And how do I act? One of my favorite things to do with my clients is to get them to ask 3 questions. And these 3 questions came from a book that I read called Crucial Conversations. I love it. And in the book, it says 3 things. Ask yourself, what is it that I want? What do I want for the other people, whoever I'm dealing with? And the third and probably the most important question is, what do I want for the relationship? Answer those questions to yourself. Then go ahead and ask the 4th question. Is what I'm about to do going to get me any of those things? If the answer is yes, do it. If the answer is no, you might want to take a look at it. Really simple coaching technique, right? 3 questions and then do the 4th question. All right. So I've told you that I'm going to give you a tip and a clue on how we can learn to manage emotions. This is one of my favorite things to do. And it took me a while. I'm an A-type personality. Always have been, probably always will be. But those are things that I need to manage in certain situations. So I spent a lot of time learning about mindfulness. And for most of us know or think we know what mindfulness is. But mindfulness is just being present, being in the present. being aware and being in the present. A couple of techniques that I had to learn and had to practice because it doesn't just come naturally. The first one is breath work. And there's all kinds of things you can get on the internet to learn about breath work. There's different techniques, 4-7-8 technique, box breath work, in, out, like holding your breath, doing all kinds of things. But the purpose of breath work is for you to breathe in clean air, right? And release all the toxic air. It's the air does some good physiologically, but the process of breathing in the good and letting out the bad does good mentally as well. The second portion that I've learned how to do is meditation. And meditation is difficult for somebody, especially somebody with an A-type personality, right? And there are techniques, and again, you can find apps online. You don't need to hire a coach for this kind of stuff, but find apps online and practice meditation. Let me tell you what I've been able to do for myself. I still have triggers too. I've been working on this for 14 years now, trying to become a better human being, but I still have triggers. People can push my buttons, and they do, right? Whether it's people at home, people in the office, customers, vendors, whoever it might be able to push some buttons. But because of some deliberate practice, meditate every day, and I practice breath work, I can now, instead of doing a 10-minute session of breath work, I can now, when I get my buttons pushed, I can now take one deep breath, let it out, and get to a calm state so that I can act appropriately rather than react, which is typically inappropriately. Counterproductive to what I'm trying to get. So I like to act rather than react. I need to act on the information, but when I react to it, when I'm in that anger or fear state, it's probably not going to be able to answer one of those three questions. What do I want? What do I want for others? What do I want for the relationships? In the appropriate way. So back when you were kids, think about what your mom used to say to you. Hey, don't answer that right now. Count to 10, right? Take a breath, do things like that. That's exactly what this is for me, is it's counting to 10, but I can, because of the amount of practice that I've done with it, which was hard at first, really hard to get somebody as active as me to calm yourself for 20 minutes or 10 minutes or even 5 minutes and just breathe and just meditate and just get things out of your mind, right? That one breath now, I can go from that triggered emotion, somebody pushed my buttons, to a calm state where I can act appropriately. Don't even need to count to 10 anymore. Just one single breath. So anyway, that's the clue for the day. 3 questions, ask yourself the 4th question. And when you get into that state, practice some mindfulness. It works. If it works on someone as intense as I am, it's going to work with you as well. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about a process, the things that kind of work that we do. Like I mentioned, we're not really good at this self-awareness. 15% of us might be, the rest of us probably aren't. And these are highly intelligent folks. So we go through sorry about that. We go through a process. The first one is a self-evaluation. This is a quiz. It's 30-question quiz that you take and you say, okay, where do I see areas that I need to improve? I take the spots that are low and see if I can raise them up a little bit in those 4 different quadrants that I mentioned earlier: emotional awareness, right? The regulation, the managing, all of that. The second portion we do is a 360-degree evaluation. And what we do for this is we get the client, whoever that client's going to be, to give us a list of 10 people, maybe 12 people. They could be peers, people that have similar jobs to you. They could be subordinates. They can be family members. They can be whoever you want, people that are going to see your behavior and be able to describe what that means. They take the same quiz, but the quiz is about, they're answering questions based on you. John does this. John doesn't do this really well, right? So what we look for then is the gaps in perception. Here's how I rate myself. Here's how they rated me on that same question or in that same scale, right? And sometimes, very rarely with executives, but sometimes we rate ourselves lower than other people rate us in a category. And that's an interesting dynamic. That has more to do with self-esteem, or sometimes it's pretending to be humble, right? That we're going to rate ourselves a little lower than we actually believe because we just don't want to come off as a blowhard. So I see that sometimes with executives, but generally what I see is executives think they're pretty good at this stuff, and other people that are working for them or living with them don't quite see it the same way. The three areas that we really think about is awareness. So that's the survey, right? We take, right? And understanding not only what the emotions do, what triggers me, how I can do something about that. And then we provide some exercises for folks to work through. When that happens, try this. When that happens, try that. And go through a series of exercises. And it's a pretty fun thing. One of the things that we do when we have a course, and I have, let's say, 8, 10 people in the course, is that we'll send out during one of the weeks, right? We'll send out a text every day, 3 or 4 times a day. And then in that text, it says, what are you doing right now? How are you feeling? Now, take a look at your surroundings, right? And what is triggering you, positive, negative, neutral, all that kind of stuff. And for people to take a kind of journal that stuff down. So that's pretty cool to do, is to say throughout the day, random times, you're going to be hitting this. Sometimes it's going to be at home. Sometimes it's going to be at the office. Sometimes it's going to be whatever you're doing. Maybe you're on the baseball field. I don't know. But you're going to hit this text and you're supposed to jot down, what am I doing? What are my surroundings? And how am I feeling about that? Right. And then we get into discussions about that. So it's awareness, understanding, and then exercises is the process. And with that, we go through a whole diagnostic process and work with people on how they can fix stuff. A lot of this stuff, some of this stuff you can do on your own, right? This whole self-awareness. Just sit with your spouse and say, well, I think I'm like this. What do you think? Right? If you got this honest relationship with that spouse, you might hear a different story. Really? That's what you think? The problem with that is when we get that close to folks, we tend to get defensive with that, which is pretty typical with folks. So I don't necessarily recommend that. Why I like the 360s is because they're anonymous. Now, while you know which 10 people that you're suggesting that we go and query, all of their information is held anonymously. You're not going to find out who said what. You will get a report showing you the gaps in perception or things that are even, right? But you're not going to find out who said what. So it makes it a lot easier to get people to be honest when they know that they're going to be held anonymously and not asking them one-on-one. So this is a pretty cool program to go do with folks. So the big takeaways here are, when you're looking at emotional intelligence and in leadership positions, it is vital to understand the emotions of others as well as yourself. And if you're not seeing it clearly, that's where we end up having gaps with folks. I was on a call with a gentleman this morning who was telling me about his boss, and very lucky individual, because his boss, he said to me, he's a CEO and he has no ego. Have you heard of that before? A CEO with no ego, right? And he said he truly believes that this man's happiness and joy comes from watching other people succeed. And wouldn't it be cool to work for that guy? You could be that person. You can be that. Yeah, sir. Our egos got us to where we needed to be. It got us all of that growth, and it got us to the positions. But people don't want to work for us. I mean, if we're so hard driving, pushing, and shoving, and getting people out of the way, people don't want to work for that. So why does it matter? Well, you want to build teams, you need to have that sort of relationship with them that they can be open and honest with you to create a true team, right? You want to get better productivity of people, you got to have people that are willing to do the work and want to do the work for and with you. You want to have retention? Like, people ask all the time, well, what's the ROI on this work? And there's not a direct ROI. I'm not going to tell you you're going to triple your revenue. Can't do that. But what I can tell you is that the emotional intelligent leader creates a culture within the organization that people want to be around. Come Sunday night, people start thinking, wow, I can't wait to get there tomorrow. That's where my tribe is. That's where my people are. That's where I feel good about myself. That's where I get to do the work. Then that culture, your retention is going to be much greater. And it's going to cost you a lot less to retain people. There's surveys out there that talk about, there's a lot of this transition happening, started in COVID, where people are changing jobs and, hey, I got 2% more money or 5% more money, and I'm going to switch jobs and the grass is going to be greener and all that. It's really not. They're going to have the same problems, but they changed the job for more money, and that 5% ended up costing you 35, 40, 50% to hire somebody new for that same position, right? So the turnover rates are going to go down, because the studies tell me this, that it takes a 30% bump in salary. If I'm happy at work, if I like the place that I work, I feel fulfilled with the work, I like the people I'm working with, I like the leadership team that I'm working with, it takes at least 30% bump in salary for me to consider moving on. That's a big stat, right? You want to retain people? Make them happy. You want to make them happy? Be a better human. It's a pretty simple concept. We don't practice it very well in real life, because we're driving, we're trying to get things done, we're trying to sell more, we're trying to do all the things that we're trying to do, and not looking at what's happening in the wake. And the boat goes through, you create a wake, and the ripple effect that happens, we are creating that wake when we are not emotionally aware. And I'm going to tell you, 85% of us are not emotionally aware, at least in ourselves. Well, we can see it in others, we can't necessarily see it ourselves. That's it as far as the presentation. A little bit of history, a little bit of why it matters, one or two kind of clues on things that you can do right now. What questions might be out there? What are you thinking? Anything come in the chat, John?
Sorry, I was muted. Not at the moment. I was just putting a reminder out to everybody. So yeah, feel free to chime in with any questions you might have.
Questions, concerns, talk about someone that you work with, that you say, how do I deal with this? All that kind of stuff. It's wide open for the group to again, interactive. This is for us, not just for me. No questions. All right. I'm going to turn it over to Joel here for a second, talk a little bit about what we do. But if you have any questions in the meantime, type them in the chat or raise your hand and let's talk.
All right, thanks, Scott. Thanks everybody for being here. I understand sometimes it's hard to articulate questions on the spot, but it's also pretty hard to go into any detailed executive insight process in 45 minutes. But you can see from the short time we spent with Scott that he knows his stuff. Our primary business here is to teach this concept and more to groups within your organizations through both half-day workshops or 6-week courses, as well as one-on-one coaching that's been able to produce measurable results within those organizations. And those results, like Scott said, they can range from employee retention and satisfaction to actual financial growth. When talking specifically about executive insight, we do have a special offer for those of you who are on the call today. We've created a one-time offer of a complete 360-degree evaluation on your emotional intelligence. This not only includes the self-analysis, but 10 other people will be asked to complete the same questions about you from their point of view. Then we'll provide you with a one-page comprehensive report that not only highlights the areas where you believe you might need some work, but also contrast your answers with your observer's answers to look for perception gaps. We all have blind spots. Obviously, it'd be good to see what those might be if we're serious about the change. Now, armed with this data, we take that into a 1-hour one-on-one with Dr. DeLong so that he can diagnose and prescribe action steps that can make a huge difference with your leadership. Normally, these 360 evaluations and one-on-one with Scott would be over a $1,700 value. But those of you on this call today, you have the opportunity to explore this for under $500, kind of a no-brainer. Now, that being said, we also want to recognize that you may not be the person in your organization who would benefit from this the most. So we're going to extend this offer to anybody within your organization as long as you sign up within the next 24 hours. That's the catch, the next 24 hours. And you'll see the information on the screen along with the QR code to the free download. And so to explore this, simply send me an email, joel@lead2goals.com, or you can call me at 385-645-5390. Now be aware that this service is always available, but for this special offer for you on this call today, this is only open for the next 24 hours. I look forward to speaking to you. Scott, back to you.
Thanks, Joel. I appreciate that. So thank you for sticking with us for 35 minutes or so.
Scott,
and hope, yeah.
somebody did have a question
Okay.
in the chat. On the 3 questions that you ask yourself,
Yeah.
do I have to answer positively to all 3 to do what I have to do on the 4th? Or do I need to change until what I have to do satisfies all 3 questions?
It's your life. You get to decide what you want to be and who you want to be, right? I've had some people, when we go through the questions, the second question, what do I want for the other people? Sometimes I hear people saying, I want that other person to suffer, right? Okay, if that's who you want to be, you get to be that. I'm not gonna try to convert you and change your mind, but typically most of us don't want others to suffer. There's an old girlfriend that I had. I mean, this was 40 years ago now that I'm thinking about this, but she said to me one time, no one ever got ahead by trying to get even. I thought that was profound. 40 years ago, and I'm still using that tagline. So while I believe the answer to the second question is important, what do I want for Joel? What do I want for John? What do I want for Kim? What do I want for Nader? The real question is, what do I want, right? What do I want to get out of this relationship? Or what do I want to get out of this situation? And the third question is the one that I found the most important in my life as I've gotten older. What do I want for the relationship? Unless it's transactional, like let's say buying a piece of real estate. I'm only gonna do that one time with this person, one time. I could care less about the relationship, right? But in most other cases, I care about the relationship even more than I care about this thing. But it's your answers that matter. Your answers to those questions and how you prioritize those get you to the 4th question to say, is what I'm about to do going to get me what it is that I'm looking for up in these 3 questions? So no, you can answer them any way you want. They don't have to be positive. It's good if they are. They don't have to be. Did that answer it for whoever asked? I hope.
Yep, they said thank you.
Young people say to me, you do you, right? You get to be whoever you are. The coaching, all that can we do. So what does a coach do? I think a coach can do 3 things. One, it can help you reframe issues. Certainly that one is one that we can help reframe. You do you, right? The second is we can challenge your assumptions. And most CEOs I deal with don't have anyone that's willing to challenge their assumption. They think they know what they're doing. They're going to go this direction. And Katie by the door, we're going that way. And people fall in line. Well, a good coach can help you challenge those assumptions. I'm not going to tell you you're wrong, but to say there might be another way of looking at this. There might be something else that we should be able to do here. And the third thing that we can do, the coach can do, a good coach will do, will hold you accountable. And that's it. I'm only going to do 3 things with my clients. I am not going to tell them what to do. I have no idea what they should do. I know what I would do, and I could give my thoughts on what I would do. I'd share my experiences with somebody. But to assume that I know what somebody should do, I don't have their background. I don't have their experience. I don't have their consequences. To assume I know what someone should do, pretty friggin' arrogant of me. So a good coach is not going to tell you what to do. A good coach is not a consultant who walks in and says, you need to do this and this and this. A good coach is going to ask, not tell. But we're going to help you reframe. We're going to challenge assumptions and hold you accountable. Well, you said you're going to do this. Where are we at? Right? Things that most senior executives don't have in their life. Okay. So anyway, thanks for sticking around for us for so long. On the screen right now is a QR code, or if you're on your desktop and you don't have the QR code available, there's a link to get into free Executive Insight book. It's, I don't know, 20, 25 minutes worth of reading. Well worth the read. Take a look at it, see what you agree with, see what you disagree with, and let's have a conversation about it. So
the link's in the chat too. So,
and the link is in the chat. All right, we have a few more minutes. If anyone has any further questions that they thought about, or anything sparked anything that they want to know about specifically, what about this, what about that, go ahead and shoot them out, and I'll give you my best shot at it. Kim, you can't tell me you don't have any questions. You always have questions.
You already answered them.
Oh,
and it's my
there
second
you
time
go.
around, so I do have that going for me.
All right. So Kim is a former client and current friend. So why I pick on her is because I knew I could get away with it. And she's gone through several courses and executive coaching as well. So I thank her for that and being here. Nader, what are you thinking? You're probably the smartest guy in the room.
I doubt it. No, it's actually pretty insightful. What you said is it's so true. It resonates. Just being in touch with who you are and trying to improve. So fully agree. And no other questions at this point. But thanks, Scott. It was great.
All right, wonderful. So anyway, folks, we put Joel's information back up here. If anyone wants to get in contact with him, certainly do so. We're not a high pressure sales group. Yes, we like getting new clients, like everybody else, but we're not going to pressure you into anything that you want. The offer is real. It is a $1,700 value for less than $500. If you're interested, or if you believe your boss might need some of this and you might want to encourage this with the boss, and I'm looking at somebody that I know right now that probably should do that, then you're welcome to do that. But as long as we do it in the next 24 hours, because we can't just give things away. We wanted to create some value for the folks that are willing to sit through this with us. So I'm going to leave this screen up a little bit. Anyone wants to take Joel's number down? If you want to go back and get the QR code, let me know. We will get you a copy of the ebook, and thank you for being here.
thanks.
I'll stick around live for anyone who wants to jump in and ask questions without a big group on too.
Scott, could you go through the 7 emotions again? I missed one.
Sure. Fear, anger,
Mhm.
sadness,
Mhm.
disgust,
Got it. Okay.
shame. Big Brene Brown fan. Shame. Surprise may or may not be, but it's like it creates an emotional response, right? Surprise. And then the last one is joy.
Thank you. And then on the slide that you had 95% and then you put 15%, what was the 15%?
The study that they did suggested that only 15% of the people that they surveyed and got results to really were self-aware. And you had to do 360 kind of reviews to be able to get that. But 15% of the people were pretty much on target with who they are and what they're thinking, where 95% thought they were.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Elizabeth, you have anything? Any questions you have for me? Oh, you're good. Okay, wonderful. All right, folks. I'm not looking at chat, so I don't see anything. I don't know if there's anything in there, John. But other than that, we are done. You get to go home. Thanks again, everybody. Really, really appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.